Oh, so you've come to sip some tea and hear some spooky tales, have you? Well, tonight is a perfect night for such things. I have some pine needle and dandelion tea brewing right now. Perfect to keep you calm during these frightening tales. So, why don't we get settled in with some blankets and pillows? I'll put another log on the fire. Oh, hey guys, it's me again, Natural Wizard. Welcome back to my channel. Today we will be returning to the scary side of Reddit with r/no sleep. Yes, that is right, spooky and creepy tales. Now, I'm pretty positive that most of these tales are made up, but nonetheless, spooky and creepy. So let us all now prepare for the creep show. It shall begin with a post titled, "I work in the London Underground, but I think I need a new job." I recently began working for the London Underground as a cleaner. I work night shifts from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., which suits me as I'm a student in my final year at university, and those shifts give me time for lectures and to study as well. The pay isn't great, but it's good enough for me. I've only had 2 shifts, but I've experienced something I cannot explain, and I don't know if anyone will believe me. On my first day, I worked with a man called Steve. One of the things he said to me was, if you hear whispers in the tunnels, just turn around and go the other way. They'll stop eventually. I laughed thinking it was just a joke to try and scare the newbie, but Steve's face told me he was totally serious. On my second shift, I was left to work on my own, so I'd get the hang of things, but Steve assured me if I needed him, all I had to do was call for him on my walkie-talkie and he'd be there. That was when I encountered my first whispers. I was sweeping one of the corridors when I heard someone whispering my name. I thought it was someone playing a prank on me, but something in my gut told me it was more than that. I froze, contemplating what to do, then I remembered Steve. Using a shaky hand, I had picked up my walkie-talkie and spoke. "Steve, I'm in the northbound corridor, but I'm hearing some weird sounds." I was cut off by a loud scream and the sound of something running in my direction. I turned around and ran all the way up the escalators and towards the staff door, where I knew there would be people on break. Whatever was chasing me was hot on my heels, and for every step I ran it felt like the gap was closing in, and I was going to be grabbed any second. I burst into the staff room. I was panting and my face felt bright red. The people in the staff room just looked at me until one of them spoke up. "So you ran into Ella, I'm guessing." I was confused about who this Ella was, and why nobody was concerned. "The whispers and screams?" they continued. I nodded. "Something chased me," I managed to say before sitting down. I was given a drink of water. "Don't take it personally. She's done that to everyone. You've just got to make sure she doesn't catch you." The people in the staff room laughed, but I didn't see how any of this was funny. I sat down with Steve in the manager's office, and he explained a little bit more about Ella and my encounter with her. Ella lives in the tunnels. She's been here as long as I have, and I bet she's probably been here even longer than that. He sipped his coffee. Ella likes to lure people in. She sees it as some sort of game, and when it doesn't go her way, she gives chase. I interrupted him. "So it's a hunt?" Steve laughed. "If that's how you want to look at it, then sure. But we will not let anything happen to you while you work here. Is that clear?" I nodded hesitantly. "Now do you think you can finish off this shift?" I was taken aback by this request. I'd just been chased and hunted by some monster that lives in the tube station, and all everyone seemed to care about was me sweeping up a bit of dirt. I begrudgingly finished my shift with no further problems from Ella, but I couldn't help feeling watched the whole time by something. I'm not due back to work for a few days, but I really don't know if I can go back there, as I'm afraid of what else is in the tunnels of the underground. Something about being in underground tunnels can really freak a person out, primarily because you never really know what's down there, and especially in a very old city like London, you really don't know what's going to be down there. That being said, even the Seattle Underground is supposed to be haunted. I went on a tour of the Seattle Underground when I was very young, and I distinctly remember it feeling very strange down there. Well, either way, that's kind of a given, considering Seattle basically burned to the ground many years ago. But anyway, let's move on to the next one, which is particularly creepy, and happened to give me chills when I read it. It is simply titled, "Antique Mirror." So my boyfriend and I moved into an apartment recently. When we first viewed the apartment, it was completely empty except for this ugly oval mirror in the middle of the living room, directly across from where our TV sits now. It's an eyesore to the whole vibe of the living room, and it's not even a decent mirror. When you look at yourself, the reflection is warped like a circus mirror. Anyways, I took it down and moved it to storage in the basement. The next day after I came home from work, I saw the mirror in the same spot, but this time it was bolted to the wall. I asked my boyfriend, and of course he had no idea what I was talking about. He just figured I changed my mind and bolted it down to the wall. I used a power drill to get it off, and I didn't even try to keep it for some sentimental reason. I threw it in the disposal room and assumed that was that. The next morning I woke to pounding in the living room. My boyfriend is looking at the mirror, and when he sees me walk in, he goes, "Listen, I don't know what game you're playing with this thing, but you can't glue, cement, whatever the hell you did to get this mirror to stick to the wall. We don't own this place. We can't just do permanent stuff like this. If the owner sees this, they're gonna freak." I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about and go check it out myself. I keep assuring him I hate the mirror and didn't want it in the living room in the first place, but he thinks I'm just playing some sort of game with him. He walks off all grumpy and irritated, which he usually does, and I'm just staring at this creepy freaking mirror. I started to mess with my hair when I realized my reflection, as warped as it is, was smiling back at me. I was not smiling, and the longer I stared, the smile continued to get bigger and bigger. It looked like the skin was going to rip off my cheeks. I was so caught off guard by this I didn't even realize I wasn't breathing. I guess I started to hold my breath, because the next thing I knew, I was waking up on the floor. My boyfriend frantically shaking me, asking me if I was okay, except I could only hear him and see him. I couldn't feel his presence or even touch. I stood up and everything was darker, much darker. Then I looked in the mirror, and it was me, but not me in general, like a carbon copy of me, standing up and hugging my boyfriend. I walked up to the mirror to pound on it, and it got my reflection's attention, and all she did was smile and take down the mirror. Oh man, that one's so creepy. Like some sort of evil mirror dimension you, switching places with you, and trapping you in whatever place they came from? Yeah, no thank you. Either way, I did enjoy that one a lot, but yes, very spooky indeed. Okay, we shall move on to the next post. It is called, "There is a demon that lives in my fireplace." There is a demon that lives in my fireplace. That's a strong way to begin a story, but I think it's important that you know the truth. I live alone, in the forest, a long way away from civilization. I chose this life, or it chose me, but no matter the reason I live, breathe, and survive a long way from everyone. I spend my day hunting, fishing, trapping, and preserving food. I'm sure you've seen TV shows about the lifestyle. Pick any weekend on Discovery or Science, and you'll find shows that tell about others who have chosen this life. I first came here about 25 years ago. I was young, idealistic, and adventurous. I'm still all of those things, but I'm also something more now. After years of independence and solitude, I met someone. She was young, idealistic, and free-spirited. To be honest, I was lonely, and she was too. She met me when I went to town on one of my few trips for staples. Even in the backwoods, you still can't produce everything for yourself. Salt, sugar, coffee, knives, axes, sleds. Sure, you can make a few of these things, and if you really tried, maybe you could produce all of it yourself. But it is much simpler to trap and trade furs for these things. But, back to my story. When I first met my wife, she was a cashier. It was the typical sitcom romance. I was the hot young mountain man with my furs, sled, and hankering for salt pork, and she was the college kid working a summer job for her uncle. I have to admit the attraction started off hot and heavy. What can I say? We were young, fresh, and playful. Maybe playful is the wrong word. Hell, we just liked each other. It was what it was, and it was fun. We married, maybe too young, and she decided to spend a winter in the cabin with me. It took a serious amount of additional time and effort to double my winter supplies to support us both, but it was worth it. Besides the obvious comfort in the bed, the additional help around the cabin made winter fly by. She learned quickly to cook, clean, prepare game, and although never a pro, she learned to skin and salt hides for me. I admit, these were some great days. By the next winter, we were parents to our first child, Gloria. She was everything we could have hoped for, and like two kids in love, we could not have been happier. We worked together to lay in additional supplies and made preparations for an infant to spend the winter in the cabin with us. Once again, the winter was the best. We made love, spent time with Gloria, and we did all the things young couples do. Which is why our son Mark was born that spring. The weeks turned to months and the season passed. I could not have been happier, and I believe she was happy too. But this is not that kind of story. As I said, there's a demon that lives in my fireplace. I first saw this demon before I met my wife. It was late in the winter. I had been snowed in for a month. The canned goods were still plentiful, but the snow had gotten so deep that even the windows of the cabin had been covered. Sure, I had gone outside many times to remove snow from the roof, I used my handmade snowshoes to traipse across the ocean of snow, but it was a losing battle. Soon it was just me, canned goods, and firewood inside the cabin. That's when he came. It was so cold outside. The cabin was barely warm. The fire, although it was burning, it didn't warm the room. The chill, the cold, it was so pervasive that the frost was on the inside of the window when he first spoke. "I see you," he said. I was so startled that at first, I thought it was the wind. I turned to look around the room when a log rolled, and the sparks formed his face. "I see you," he said again. This time I knew it was not the wind. I have to be honest, I'm not sure if I screamed, cried out, or simply said, "What the hell?" But I know I was scared. I blurted out, "What did you say?" "I see you," he said again. Through the sparks I could almost make out a sardonic smile from the face in the coals. I knew this couldn't be real, but there he was. He smiled. "What the hell?" I yelled, and I began to back away from the fire. I only stopped when I tripped backward over a stool and landed by the door. The door had been snowed in for a week. I did not even think about the fact that I could not leave. I was just scared crapless and trying to run away. Fight or flight, right? No, it was get the hell out. As I stumbled to my feet, he laughed. It was a demon laugh, not demonic. That's cliché. It was the sound of a demon laughing. He sounded like Rob Lowe in Teeny Bopper movie laughing at the nerd who spilled a Pepsi. It was a self-assured laugh that said, "I'm better than you and I'm in control, but you still amuse me, kid." I didn't know what to do next, let's be honest. Who would know what to do when first confronted with a demon? Would you? "What are you?" I asked. "Are you a demon?" "Good question," he said, as the sparks popped and his teeth moved in the flame. "I guess that is the best description I could give about me." "Why are you here?" I stammered. Honestly, I had no other thought. I have never been particularly religious. I mean, sure, we all have seen TV shows, movies, and read books, but I couldn't really think of anything else to ask. "I need a favor," he said as a few more sparks drifted up into the chimney. I felt the room grow colder as he spoke. It was beyond cold. It was soaking into my bones. The sparks, the coals, the flames, they gave off no heat. They seemed to take the heat away as if sucking the heat from the room and drawing in the outside air. I shivered. I know my voice was quivering when I spoke, but I had to ask, "What favor?" "You're going to die, you know," the demon whispered. His voice was crisp, clean, and seemed to come from each spark as a log rolled in the fireplace. The temperature in the cabin continued to plummet as I stammered out, stupidly, "What? How do you know? When?" His voice sounded like the steam from a fresh log covered in snow, placed on a hot fire. "Because you are out of firewood. The door is snowed shut, and there is nothing but these few logs remaining. But I can save you." My mind was still adjusting to the fact that I was talking to a fire in my fireplace, but the shape, the form, the demon was clearer than ever in the sparks. The flames, the smoke, he was real. This wasn't some can of spoiled salmon causing an hallucination. A demon was speaking to me from the fireplace. I didn't deny his premise. I knew my fire was all that was keeping me warm, and the winter was going to win. Looking back, I know I should have questioned him. I should have tried to argue. I should have denied his presence, but he made sense. I was cold. I knew, without a doubt, that I was not going to have enough firewood to make it through the winter. No matter how much food I had to eat, nothing beats temperatures in the -30s. The canned goods were only edible if they were not frozen. Grease is not good when it's a lump of ice. "How? What do you want from me?" is all I could whisper. I didn't know what else to say or ask. "You'll know the cost when it's time to pay it. If you agree to my price, I'll save you," he said as the sparks rose and another log rolled backwards. I swear, looking back on this, he was smiling. A twisted, know-it-all effing smile. I hate him for that. But, as I said, that's hindsight. I was cold. I knew he was right. I didn't know what else to do. In a moment of clarity, I saw the snow, the ice, the drifts, the pitiful pile of firewood, and I could see it all in an instant. I was going to die. I didn't even think of another option. Later, I would ask myself if I really had a moment of clarity, or if it was the demon in my head. I'll never really know. I simply agreed. I woke later with my head against the door of the cabin, a stool overturned, and the sounds of ice melting outside my door. I'm not sure how long I slept. Was it sleep? I don't know. I just know where I was, and I opened my eyes. There was no fire in the fireplace. There was no demon. There was no bitter cold either. The winter had broken, and I rose up on my sore limbs and stood. I stretched out my muscles and shook away the image of my fireplace talking to me. It took minutes, hours, days for me to shake away the image of my fireplace and its demon talking to me, but each time I took a minute to question myself, I felt a pit in my stomach open up. I could not convince myself it was just a dream or a head injury. Somehow I knew the fireplace had a demon inside and expected something from me. The years passed, and I met my wife. We had children, and the cabin became our winter home. This year, we spent the winter together, and the weather turned bitter again. The firewood burned too cold and too fast. The canned goods are running low, and the snow is drifting deeper against the windows. A week ago, while my family slept, shivering in their beds, I stoked the fire and tried to rake the coals. Something spoke to me. I'm not sure where the voice came from, but I know it said, "It's time. Pay me." My children's mother had been missing now for days. The cold is seeping back into the room. The firewood is not enough to chase away the cold. I am slowly turning a nice plump roast on a spit above the fire. The smell of almost pork meets my nose. I can hear a happy, satisfied sound as the fat is dripping onto the coals. There is a voice, light and sparking, in the fire. He seems to be content, but the children will wake soon, and he will probably expect me to pay in full. So yeah, that's a little disturbing, but yeah, this guy did some killing and now he's doing some cannibalizing. So yeah, don't be like this guy. If you got a demon in your fireplace, you must call upon the supreme waifu, Hestia, goddess of hearth and home, and she will use her divine anime powers to squash that thing. But anyway, I think I've given this subreddit a good enough test drive. I hope you all enjoyed the spooky scaries. If you have any spooky, scary stories of your own, feel free to share them. But hopefully I will see you all next time, so thank you so much for watching and spending some time with me, and as always, don't forget your tea before you go.